The bodies in the sea weren't a mass of dead fish, but genuine human corpses. The American police immediately launched an investigation. To their surprise, they discovered that these individuals were all time travelers. Furthermore, a crisis that would annihilate all of humanity was set to occur soon. One day earlier, Patrol Officer Jude was patrolling the beach as usual. Suddenly, he noticed a few figures lying on the sand not far away. His years of experience as an officer immediately alerted Jude that something was wrong. He quickly went over to check. Sure enough, they were all human corpses. Jude couldn't help but wonder, what kind of shocking case could lead to so many deaths? Suddenly, Jude noticed that one of the little girls still seemed to be breathing. He immediately took this key witness to a location away from the water, then promptly notified his colleagues to prepare a report. At this moment, the two saw an even more horrifying scene. In the nearby waters, a large number of human corpses were being washed ashore with the tide. This incident immediately drew the attention of the local police. Officers arrived at the beach to investigate the source of these individuals. Although most of them had drowned, they still found 47 survivors. The responsible officers speculated that they might have been passengers from a cruise ship. A maritime disaster had suddenly occurred, causing them to end up here. However, further investigation revealed that these individuals had no life-saving equipment at all. Moreover, there were no wreckage of any nearby boats. It was as if they had suddenly appeared in the sea. To find out how these people ended up here, Jude questioned some of the survivors, including the girl. He learned two shocking pieces of news. The girl, who identified herself as Laura, claimed to be a time traveler from 150 years in the future. However, she couldn't remember the specifics of the process. She only remembered suddenly appearing in the ocean. The moment after entering the machine, it was only with her mother's help that she managed to reach the shore. Jude and the others naturally didn't believe Laura's account. However, the other survivors confirmed that what the girl said was indeed true. Jude was extremely shocked by this, but a new question arose in his mind. Jude couldn't understand why people from the future would come back to this era. Then Jude received a second piece of shocking news. Laura explained that, in the near future, a war would break out on this land. The vast majority of humanity would be exterminated. They had come back to the past to escape this disaster. Upon hearing such outrageous news, Jude found it completely unbelievable. However, the higher-ups took it very seriously. They immediately dispatched more officers to separately question the 47 survivors. To investigate the truth of the matter, each of them claimed to be from 150 years in the future. They admitted that a war had occurred in their time that nearly destroyed all of humanity. However, it wasn't caused by any modern nations. Instead, it was a superpower organization known as the Apex. In their era, many people underwent genetic mutations. Many new humans with superpowers emerged. Their physical abilities and intellect far surpassed those of ordinary people. The Apex organization believed that the new humans were the true humanity. They considered ordinary people to be flawed inferior products that must be exterminated, so they continually slaughtered ordinary people. To escape this massacre, these people from the future ultimately chose to return to the past. However, an accident occurred with the time machine along the way, causing the landing location to be incorrect. That was why they ended up thrown into the sea. The vast majority of time travelers died in this accident. The story sounded incredibly ridiculous, but everyone's accounts were completely consistent. It didn't seem like a joke at all. Jude had to start considering that perhaps all of this was true. At this moment, Jude suddenly noticed that the girl, Laura, seemed a bit off. Through questioning, he learned that there was no sign of Laura's mother among the 400 bodies found by the police. Now, she was extremely worried about her mother's safety. Jude thought Laura's mother had been eaten by fish and didn't take it seriously. However, in reality, Laura's mother, Anna, wasn't dead at all. She was fortunate to be rescued by a passing fishing boat. She had only just awakened. With the help of the fishermen, Anna reached the shore safely, and she was warmly welcomed by them. However, Anna's thoughts were constantly with her daughter. By chance, Anna learned from the news that over 400 human bodies had been discovered on a nearby shore. She immediately thought that her daughter was likely among them. Anna memorized Jude's appearance from the footage in the news. She then set out to find him. On the other side, Jude, at the police station, finished handling his tasks and was about to drive to the crime scene for further investigation. However, as soon as he got in the car, he was confronted with a gun to his head. Jude forced himself to remain calm and asked what the person intended to do. Anna immediately told Jude that she hoped he would help her sneak into the crime scene to find her child. Jude didn't dare to say much and quickly took her to the investigation site at the coast. However, it was heavily guarded here. It was nearly impossible for Anna to blend in. Just when Jude thought she would back down, to his surprise, Anna began carefully observing the structure of the base. she was actually planning to break in. Moments later, Anna devised a plan. Under her threat, Jude took Anna to the location of the power switch in the base, then they were forced to cut the power. The entire base was plunged into darkness instantly. The guards rushed to the power switch area to investigate the cause of the blackout. Meanwhile, Anna took advantage of the weakened defenses to break in with Jude. Then Anna saw the more than 400 bodies. She searched through the children's bodies one by one, but she still didn't see the person she was looking for. Jude also guessed that the person Anna was looking for was Laura. He immediately revealed to her that, in addition to these bodies, there were 47 survivors, one of whom was a girl named Laura. Upon hearing this name, Anna immediately reacted. Jude confirmed his suspicion. Anna forced him to take her to find the survivors. Just then, the power system suddenly came back online. Jude seized the opportunity to grab the gun, instantly turning the situation around. Then 2 guards noticed what was happening. They drew their guns and pointed them at Anna. Yet despite this, Anna showed no signs of panic. Then, with a speed that ordinary people could hardly imagine, she swiftly dealt with the 3 of them. Anna easily jumped and escaped through a window several meters high. Such an action left everyone utterly shocked. Afterward, the female officer investigating the case watched the surveillance footage. She speculated that this might be what the time travelers referred to as the new humans with superpowers. At this moment, Jude mentioned that she was immensely strong. The gun that was originally in his car was actually locked with a chain. That woman had effortlessly broken the chain with her bare hands. Upon hearing Jude's report, the female officer's expression grew increasingly serious. She realized that this was beyond her capabilities and immediately reported it to her superiors. However, at this moment, the female officer suddenly received a message. A survivor named Leon approached the female officer. He revealed to her that the time travelers weren't just from their group. Long ago, another group of time travelers had come here. Moreover, Leon disclosed that these individuals had an important mission that would change the world completely. The female officer realized that the complexity of the situation had far exceeded her imagination. Meanwhile, Anna, who had escaped from the base, was contemplating how to find her daughter, but she was stopped by a small-time thug. He wanted to borrow some money from her. However, it was clear he had picked the wrong target. By the time this thug was found again, he was already bloodied and unconscious. However, the thug's robbery gave Anna some inspiration. She first went to an auto parts warehouse and quickly skimmed through the relevant instructions. Using the parts there, she assembled a complete car. She planned to rob the police. However, Anna was unaware that every move she made was being monitored by the police. After all, driving a newly assembled, unlicensed car was too conspicuous. Considering Anna's combat abilities, the police only dispatched someone to follow her at a distance. They didn't intervene directly to avoid conflict. However, the officer's tracking skills clearly needed improvement. Because Anna quickly noticed, she took out her dagger, preparing to kill him. But in the next second, she suddenly changed her plan. She turned the car around, leading the officer to a secluded corner. The officer thought she was trying to shake him off, so he pursued her relentlessly. When he finally caught up, he found the car was already empty, and he had arrived in a remote suburb. The officer immediately realized something was wrong, and began to look around cautiously. But to his surprise, Anna wasn't lying in wait nearby. This left the officer feeling puzzled. Meanwhile, Anna suddenly appeared at the local police station. Everyone was on high alert at her presence. Anna stated that she wasn't there to trouble them, but simply wanted to see her child, Laura. Perhaps moved by Anna's maternal love, Jude expressed his willingness to help her. He then drove Anna toward a remote shipyard on the coast. During the journey, Anna noticed that this route was different from the previous one. To this, Jude casually claimed that the survivors had been relocated to other places. Perhaps believing Jude's words, Anna didn't ask any further. Moments later, the two arrived at the shipyard. Under Jude's guidance, they ventured deeper. Suddenly, Jude stopped in his tracks. He said that Laura was in a room deeper inside. Anna quickly walked in. However, in the next second, Jude suddenly locked the room from the inside. Anna immediately realized something was wrong and tried to escape. But this was precisely the trap that Jude had set for her. The 1-meter-thick iron door was something Anna could never break through. Jude quickly contacted the lead female officer with excitement, saying he had captured Anna and wanted to take credit with his superiors. The female officer drove to the shipyard. However, before she could reach her destination, she saw 2 armed helicopters fly overhead. It turned out that their communication devices had long been monitored by the National Security Agency. Now that they learned that the superpowered Anna had been captured, they dispatched a special operations team to capture her. Jude, stationed at the shipyard, guessed something was up when he saw helicopters in the sky. But before he could think of a response, a special operations team burst into the shipyard. Jude lost consciousness completely in the smoke. The special operations team headed straight for the room where Anna was held. Seeing the figure lying inside, the team assumed that the person had also been drugged and unconscious. They were about to move in to capture her, but unexpectedly, Anna was merely pretending. In the next moment, Anna suddenly stood up. Before the special operations team could react, they were all taken down by Anna. However, the security agency had dispatched 2 special operations teams. The other team rushed over upon hearing the commotion. Without the advantage of a surprise attack, Anna decided not to engage and jumped into the water to escape. The special operations team could only shoot at her from a distance. Ultimately, they helplessly watched Anna disappear. The head of the security agency was extremely angry about the failure of the special operations team. He sensed that things were heading toward a state of chaos, because the head of the security agency was one of the other groups of time travelers mentioned by Leon not long ago. The head of the security agency learned about Anna and the other's appearance from the female officer. He had a bad feeling about it. Later, Leon approached the head and claimed to be a time traveler from the future. He said he was there to stop the evil plans of another group of time travelers. The head of the security agency was even more convinced that these people couldn't be allowed to remain, to ensure they wouldn't interfere with the plans. David, the head of the agency, dispatched people to secretly imprison Leon. He then immediately contacted his arriving companions to discuss how to deal with this group of time travelers. Upon learning that there were members of the Apex organization among them, they decided to eliminate all of the time travelers. Now, although the female officer was unable to participate in capturing Anna, she received another important piece of news. She learned from the survivors at the base that to handle ordinary people more efficiently, the future Apex organization developed a viral weapon called Mantle. As soon as ordinary humans were infected, they would die rapidly. The only resistance was the superhuman genes of the new humans. To ensure that none of the survivors had this virus, the female officer immediately ordered checks on everyone. However, the results filled her with dread. The little girl, Laura, was carrying this special virus. If left unchecked, it could lead to the extinction of humanity in this era. Due to the virus, the female officer immediately ordered Laura to be isolated. On the other side, Anna pulled the bullet. Embedded in her arm, the new humans possessed extraordinary physiology. Without any treatment, her wound healed completely in just half a day. However, the pursuers were unaware of this. They followed the blood trail to where Anna had treated her wound, but all they found was a bloodied note left by her. After that, there was no trace of her. They thought Anna was injured and couldn't have escaped far. They sealed off the nearby area and searched for Anna's hiding place. Such a foolish decision led to the demise of the squad. Fully recovered, Anna seized the opportunity while they were searching separately and immediately hunted down her pursuers. The ordinary soldiers, caught off guard, had no ability to fight back. Anna easily dealt with most of the pursuers. Only the leader of the pursuit team remained. Anna didn't take him seriously and appeared openly in front of the squad leader. At this moment, an unexpected event occurred. The squad leader pulled out a controller. After he pressed the switch, Anna seemed to be severely injured, clutching her head and falling to the ground. Clearly, the pursuers were well prepared. In reality, this weapon was specifically designed to target new humans and was developed to exceed the capabilities of ordinary people. The principle was simple. They could hear various ultrasonic waves that ordinary people couldn't detect. So, by activating high-frequency ultrasound nearby, they could severely injure new humans. The squad leader boasted about his victory. Anna gritted her teeth and, enduring the pain, grabbed an object nearby. She knocked the control switch out of the squad leader's hand. The high-frequency ultrasound ceased immediately. With the interference gone, Anna rushed to the squad leader. Then, Anna quickly fled the scene to continue searching for her daughter. Unbeknownst to her, Laura was locked in a quarantine room. At this moment, she looked as if she were on the brink of death. Perhaps she would soon take her last breath. The police were only monitoring Laura's condition via a screen. They had no intention of getting any closer. On the other side, since the case was taken over by the security agency, Jude could only take a break and spend time with his son. The two went to the beach, preparing to watch a fireworks show. However, in the next second, an explosion suddenly rang out nearby. Jude went to investigate the source of the explosion. The scene before him completely stunned him. Jude recognized the deceased as his superior. He realized that this was no ordinary case. Sure enough, after examining the body, Jude found a bloodied note in the deceased's mouth. It contained threatening words about kidnapping, claiming that Jude had to trade Laura for his son. Jude sensed trouble and hurried back to the beach to look for his son. But it was too late. The beach was deserted, and there was no sign of his son anywhere. Jude believed that Anna couldn't have gone far, so he immediately began to track her. Jude used the tracking system to continuously search for his son's phone location. He then drove his car quickly toward the target location. However, every move Jude made was being watched by Anna. She provocatively called him shortly after he set off. She reiterated that only by exchanging Laura would she return Jude's son to him. After saying this, she hung up. giving Jude no chance to negotiate. A moment later, Jude finally arrived at the location marked by the tracking signal. However, he only saw his son's phone there. There were no other clues whatsoever. The next day, Jude went to the investigation base. It had already been taken over by the security agency. Even Jude had no authority to enter. Helpless, he found the previous lead female officer and explained his situation to her. He asked her to help him infiltrate the base to bring out Laura in exchange for his son. After hearing Jude's story, the female officer felt very sympathetic. However, given the current situation, even she couldn't easily gain access, let alone take Laura out from inside. Under the surveillance of the security agency, just as the two were at a loss, a woman suddenly appeared. She was the head researcher studying the virus in Laura. Upon hearing about Jude's situation, she was also very sympathetic. Based on her observations of Laura during this time, she found that Laura's condition was extremely dire. Even with various life support devices, Laura had very little time left. She would die within 3 days at most. The researcher couldn't bear to see the girl leave this world like that. Coincidentally, not long ago, she learned from Laura that there was a way to treat her from Anna, so she decided to help Jude and Anna secretly smuggle Laura out of the base. This way, not only could they save Laura, but Jude's son could also return safely. Thus, they formed a temporary alliance, planning to bring Laura out of the quarantine area. On the other side, Anna never intended to harm Jude's son, so Anna took Jude's son to a scenic lake outdoors. She planned to let him stay there for a while, before sending him back home. However, the little boy was a bit restless. Seeing two people fishing nearby, he asked if he could fish as well. Anna had no fishing gear at all. She had a quick idea and immediately approached the two men. She inquired if they could lend her a set of fishing gear. The two were already feeling bad about the Air Force. Now, seeing someone intending to take their fishing gear, they immediately wanted to teach Anna a lesson. But Anna wasn't to be trifled with and fought back immediately. Not only did she get the fishing gear, but she also obtained 2 sets. As for the two unlucky men, they had to support each other as they left. Seeing the fishing gear, Jude's son was very happy, and even offered to teach Anna some fishing techniques. The two happily spent quite a while together like this, until Jude's call suddenly came in. He said he had brought Laura out of the base, and hoped to arrange a meeting place with Anna. Upon hearing that she would soon see her daughter, Anna sent the boy back home, then rushed to the location agreed upon with Jude. However, upon her arrival, she found no trace of her daughter. There was only an adult woman beside Jude, just as Anna thought they had deceived her, and was ready to teach them a lesson. The woman suddenly spoke up, identifying herself as the researcher caring for Laura. She then informed Anna about Laura's condition, hoping to obtain relevant medication from Anna to treat Laura. Otherwise, under the current circumstances, Laura couldn't survive without life support. To reassure Anna, the researcher would stay by her side. Although Anna still had some doubts in her mind, she knew that the virus the woman mentioned did exist. After a brief contemplation, she agreed to their plan. She then informed Jude that the child had been sent back home. Hearing this, Jude hurried home and indeed found his son after opening the door. Father and son finally met, and couldn't help but embrace each other. At this moment, Jude realized that Anna had never intended to harm his son. From the very beginning, she just wanted his help to find Laura. On the other side, Anna followed the researcher to her lab, to prepare the medication to treat Laura. The researcher spoke about many difficulties the research was currently facing. There was no clue about the antidote whatsoever. After some hesitation, Anna told the researcher that the medication for the treatment was quite simple. In fact, there was a ready-made solution available. The antidote for this virus was the bone marrow of new humans like them. At Anna's request, the researcher prepared various equipment. They were set to extract a small amount of bone marrow from Anna's body. However, Anna's actions were quite bold. She actually performed the bone marrow extraction herself, without any anesthesia. This act completely shocked the researcher. Since Jude understood Anna's intentions, he fully set aside his prejudices, and decided to help this mother longing for her child. He proactively called the female officer to inform her about the situation. However, the female officer stated that she had an urgent matter to attend to. She asked Jude to come for a face-to-face meeting the next day at a specific location. Neither of them expected that this call would turn out to be their last communication. The female officer indeed had something important to handle at that moment. Not long ago, a survivor named Paul suddenly approached the female officer. He requested her assistance in finding his wife, who had been missing for many years. According to Paul's account, his wife was a member of another group of time travelers, so she had arrived in this time long ago. Paul then took out a hand-drawn portrait. He claimed it was the likeness of his wife. The female officer was somewhat skeptical of Paul's story. Out of caution, she compared the portrait with images in the police database. To the female officer's surprise, there was indeed a woman who looked almost exactly like the portrait. According to the information, her name was Evelyn. Her background was very mysterious. as she seemed to have appeared suddenly 10 years ago, she had now become a standard elite wealthy individual. The female officer began to believe Paul's account. She urgently left the base to head to Evelyn's home to investigate her true identity. When the female officer knocked on the door, the person who greeted her was indeed identical to the one in the portrait. The female officer explained her purpose for visiting. She then took out a photo of Paul and asked Evelyn if she recognized the man. Upon seeing the photo, Evelyn immediately admitted that the man in the photo was indeed her husband. However, Evelyn also stated that she wasn't a time traveler, even. Paul wasn't a time traveler. The female officer was very puzzled by this situation. Then Evelyn explained the background of the situation. In her account, Paul suffered from severe mental illness. Years ago, he had met some fanatics from a cult. Since then, his mental illness had worsened. He always believed he was a time traveler from the future. Evelyn couldn't stand him anymore, so she distanced herself from him and came to this unfamiliar city to make a living. Seeing the female officer's skeptical expression, Evelyn stated that she had collected a lot of evidence to prove what she had just said. She then went into the room to get what she called evidence. The female officer casually looked around outside. Evelyn's home had many photographs. At this moment, the female officer noticed a man in a group photo who looked very familiar. She quickly remembered that this man was David, the head of the security agency. In that instant, the female officer seemed to realize something. But in the next moment, with the sound of a gunshot, she collapsed to the ground, powerless. The female officer looked at her clothes soaked in blood, then she glanced at the gun-wielding Evelyn. She seemed to understand something, but she no longer had the chance to speak. The next day, Jude arrived at the police station as agreed, to meet the female officer. However, he was informed by a colleague that all contact with the female officer had been lost since yesterday afternoon. As of now, there was still no news of her. Jude felt a vague sense of unease in his heart. Thinking about what she had said on the phone earlier, Jude immediately went to her residence, only to find it empty. Only a computer sat alone on the desk. Jude took it back to the police station. He entrusted relevant technicians to investigate its contents. Before long, the technicians successfully extracted the usage records from the days leading up to the female officer's disappearance. Jude then learned that she was investigating a case from 10 years ago. At that time, several mysterious men and women had suddenly appeared in the U.S. There had been no previous records of them at all. But after that, they each became major players in both politics and business. Among them, the most notable was David, the head of the security agency. After killing the female officer, Evelyn immediately found her companions. They discussed how to handle the female officer's body. After a brief consideration, David came up with an idea. He planned to take this opportunity to eliminate all the second group of time travelers. Through their conversation, it became clear what David and the others' original plan for time travel was. They initially returned to this era not to escape from war, but to kill the founder of the Apex organization. This was to ensure that future humans could live happily. However, as David and the others gradually became influential figures in various fields, using the knowledge they brought from the future, they began to develop different intentions. To a certain extent, David and the others also became new humans. So after the others followed the plan to kill the founder of the Apex organization, David instead protected one of them and publicly claimed that they had died. As a result, the Apex organization still existed in the future world and launched even more aggressive extermination plans against ordinary humans. People were forced to use time machines to escape to the present for refuge. Meanwhile, the researcher brought the bone marrow extracted from Anna and injected it into Laura as an antidote. The bone marrow with superhuman genes quickly took effect, resisting the virus. In almost no time, Laura went from being on the brink of death to feeling incredibly revitalized. It was clear that the virus in her body had been completely eradicated. The researcher used this to secure her an opportunity to leave the quarantine zone. This was the most crucial part of Anna's plan to save her daughter. Not long after, Laura suddenly saw a shadow flash by while walking in the camp. She then noticed that she had a note in her hand. It was covered with many mysterious symbols, seemingly in some kind of language. Laura took a quick glance at it and immediately headed to the public restroom. As soon as Laura entered, the skylight above the restroom was forcefully torn open. It turned out to be Anna. After much hardship, the mother and daughter finally reunited. However, this was clearly not a place to talk. Anna pulled her daughter out through the skylight, but they hadn't gotten far when Jude suddenly appeared in front of them. As Anna looked on in confusion, Jude kindly walked up to Laura. He removed a small bracelet from her wrist. It was a tracking device installed on Laura by the authorities. Seeing her daughter made Anna so happy that she completely forgot about such an important thing. Anna thanked Jude and then escaped with her daughter. They didn't rest until night fell at a hotel. But at this moment, Anna suddenly heard a strange sound. She was certain that it wasn't a normal occurrence. Following the sound, Anna discovered it was a plush toy. It was a toy that her daughter Laura had brought out from the base. Anna immediately realized something was wrong and decisively tore open the plush toy. Sure enough, there was a tracking device hidden inside. Anna knew that their location had been compromised. She immediately grabbed her daughter, preparing to escape. However, she soon realized it was already too late. The security agency had arrived nearby long ago. Seeing Anna drive away, the security personnel followed her. What Anna didn't know was that they had tampered with her car. Moments later, Anna's car suddenly had a flat tire. She had just managed to escape with Laura. However, in the next second, numerous special operations team members surrounded Laura. Unlike the last time, this time they were fully prepared. They gave Anna no chance to escape at all. Ultimately, it was no surprise that Anna was captured alive by these special forces. David's plan was half complete at this point. The other half was quietly underway. The body of the female officer, dead for over 10 days, suddenly appeared near the investigation base. It was coincidentally discovered by the survivors. The police had known of this arrangement, so they immediately investigated the location where the female officer's body was found, but there were no findings. However, they didn't care about that at all, because everything was already planned. Then they searched Paul's room without any evidence. They actually found the missing service weapon of the female officer in his desk drawer. Seeing this, Paul was completely bewildered. He couldn't understand why it was in his drawer, but Paul knew that this was definitely a conspiracy. Soon, Paul was taken away for questioning. However, the person interrogating him was unexpectedly his wife, Evelyn, whom he hadn't seen for many years. She stated that all of this was part of their plan. Evelyn claimed that they were setting up a plan to allow everyone in the future to become new humans. As long as Paul cooperated, he would enjoy endless wealth and luxury for the rest of his life. The couple could also reunite once again. However, completing such a grand plan would certainly require some sacrifices. Immediately after, Evelyn took out a prepared manuscript. She stated that as long as Paul recited the words on it, he could fulfill this great plan. Paul didn't say much because he trusted his wife, so, at Evelyn's request, he read the contents of the manuscript in front of the camera. Seeing her goal achieved, Evelyn left with the tape. Very satisfied, Paul was then released and followed Evelyn to the luxurious villa. However, Paul had a strange feeling in his heart, so, while his wife wasn't paying attention, he secretly called his companion at the base to tell them everything that had happened. The person on the line was the leader of the survivors and the developer of the time machine. He was responsible for both groups of time travelers. However, the leader was talking with Jude now. After seeing the investigation records of the deceased female officer, he felt a lingering doubt. Through communication with the survivor leader, he learned that David, the head of the security agency, and others who had suddenly appeared 10 years ago, were also time travelers, and also learned about Paul's situation. He recounted the general contents of the manuscript. It accused some fanatics from a cult among the survivors. They had orchestrated this farce of pretending to be time travelers. Their true intention was actually to carry out a terrorist attack against the police. This was clearly a smear. Paul had always worried that Evelyn and the others were preparing to use this testimony against the people at the base. This was also what Jude and the others had anticipated, although they were unsure of what David and the others were actually planning. It was definitely not anything good. At this moment, Paul's call was suddenly disconnected. His secret contact with the people at the base was discovered by his wife, Evelyn. She was furious about his betrayal. Without any hesitation, she eliminated this traitor. Clearly, in Evelyn's eyes, Paul was just a pawn to be used. She had long since lost any marital feelings for him. After Evelyn discovered that her husband had leaked the plan, she immediately contacted David. She urged him to act quickly and eliminate these later time travelers. However, what they didn't know was that Jude had already come up with a counter-strategy. He had actually leaked the information. This way, David and the others had no reason to openly eliminate these people. Otherwise, they would definitely be suspected by the outside world. However, David and his group clearly wouldn't give up so easily, so he led some subordinates to the base. Under the guise of a visit, he told everyone that the US government warmly welcomed them. He also mentioned that new identities had been prepared for them, allowing them to live comfortably in the future. However, before releasing them, they all had to receive a vaccine. This was to prevent them from being infected by the viruses. In this time, this wasn't an unreasonable request, so the people present had little suspicion. But the vaccine David mentioned was actually a poison, secretly developed by the security agency. They could later claim that future people couldn't adapt to the environment of this time. Just as David's scheme was about to succeed, a new twist suddenly occurred. Jude had never believed David's words from the beginning, so he secretly rescued the imprisoned Anna. He prepared to use force to break through the security agency's blockade and lead everyone to escape. With Anna's extraordinary abilities, the unprepared guards were no match for her at all. In just a moment, they were all taken down by her. However, the sounds of the battle alerted David and the others. He immediately ordered his team to capture Anna. Jude seized this opportunity to relocate all the time travelers. He then lied to David, claiming that all the survivors had vanished. He requested that they send people out to search for them. Meanwhile, Jude took advantage of the weakened defenses to sabotage the base's power system. This rendered the high-voltage fences outside completely ineffective. He then organized everyone to escape from the damaged area. Anna, who had been waiting, saw her separated daughter once again. However, David's men quickly repaired the power system. At this point, not all the time travelers had escaped. One woman trying to escape was trapped by the high-voltage fence. She looked to be in great pain. Fortunately, Anna acted in time to prevent a tragedy. By the time the security agency personnel arrived, all the time travelers had escaped the base and vanished without a trace. David's plan had completely failed. However, he seemed not to care. Even soon after, he entrusted Jude to provide these people with new identities. This would allow them to continue living in this era. Anna was filled with doubt, but she accepted this identity. She began a new life with her daughter. The film ends here. The Crossing was released in 2018. The film's theme is relatively innovative. However, the narrative pace in the early part was indeed too slow. Moreover, it was laden with many political viewpoints. This led to a rushed conclusion of the plot. If you enjoy my channel, please like and subscribe to it.